struggling national power utility ESCOM has received approval from energy regulator NERSA to increase electricity prices for the fiscal year beginning on April the 1st by 18.65%. Now, this is less than what ESCOM had asked. The national power utility had requested a more than 32% rise, citing higher fuel prices, the depreciation of its generation assets, and increased purchases from independent power suppliers. But NERSA, the regulator, also gave the go-ahead for a 12.74% tariff increase the year after. And over to Kenya now. In a bid to keep the betting industry in check, the government has introduced stringent measures that mandate betting companies to remit taxes to the state on a daily basis before 1 a.m. Now, to facilitate this, the Kenya Revenue Authority has integrated its tax system with the betting sector's platforms. Now, this allows for real-time computation of taxes, including the 15% tax on betting, gaming, and lottery, and the 20% withholding tax on winnings paid out to customers. While still in Kenya, economic hardships have pushed 8.8 million, or 43% of National Health Insurance Fund members, to default on monthly contributions, effectively condemning them to out-of-pocket medical expenses. Now, the latest NHIF data for the financial year ended June 2022 shows that dormant members hit 8.8 million from 5.03 million the year before, making the insurer miss its 90.5 billion shilling targeted premium collections for the review period. Well, Sanyade Okoli, CEO of Alpha African Advisory, joins us from our Lagos studio to discuss further. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Now, let's start in South Africa. Is the bleak outlook from Finance Minister Godongwana justified?
Good morning to you. Well, yes, absolutely, because as you are aware, over quite a few years now, the growth rate in South Africa has been quite low. We're looking at under 2% for a prolonged period of time. And the power situation has gotten worse, and that has been having a huge negative drag on economic growth in the country. So is it justified? Yes. Certainly the outlook.
Mm-hmm. Now, he also says one of the government's priorities is building investor confidence. Do you think that can be achieved, taking a look at the situation playing out in that country today?
Well, it can be achieved. The question is what needs to happen for it to be achieved. In the first instance, addressing the power issue needs to happen, because without that, I can see that there will be significant investor cautiousness. The issue of corruption also needs to be addressed, because actually when it comes to the power and the growth rate, they both are linked to the corruption matter as well.
Look at, the points you've just made. I mean, these are some of the issues bedeviling the continent generally. So when we talk about being able to achieve this or correct this before, to build investor confidence, I'm asking myself, how long will that take? Do you think this is something that can be achieved, given a very short window, or will they have to seek other alternatives?
The question is the level of political will there is to actually make it happen, because you've got to take steps. It's not just going to happen. Investors aren't just going to have confidence. You need to ensure that you have a proper understanding of the issues they have, the concerns they have, and you have a clear plan to mitigate those issues. So there's the question of, do you have the will, and do you have the skill, the wherewithal to make it happen?
Said dealing with South Africa's power crisis is critical, and I kind of agree with that. I mean, power is an immediate need. Now, would you as an investor want to see progress in the power sector before committing any funds?
Absolutely. I think that is critical. But having said that, Part of it would depend on the sector I'd be looking to invest in. Obviously, some sectors are more affected by the power issues than others. But in general, yes, because power speaks to so many other aspects of any economy.
Subject of power in South Africa, the average citizen will be seeing tariff increases. Now, is anger the natural reaction to paying higher tariffs for power that is obviously, low in supply? What do you think is going to play out here?
Bottom line is there will always be pushback and resistance to price increases for utilities, especially at a time where there are economic difficulties. But then, as you rightly said, when power is in low supply, then people feel even more resentful to have to pay more for less. But having said that, if people do desire more power, then they need to pay for it, because the finances of Eskom is in dire straits. You just mentioned in the news that they've managed to get approval for the increase. The increase isn't a nice to have, the increase is a need to have.
Yeah, but then if the public is already skeptical, about the operations of the energy company to begin with, you mentioned the fact that other issues have to be dealt with, the government's political will to tackle corruption as well. I'm not sure how this will be well received. Yes, there is that need to pay more for us to see the growth in infrastructure to generate more power. But with all this playing out, do you think it's going to be an easy pill to swallow for South Africans?
Absolutely not. It's not going to be an easy pill. But we have to ask ourselves, what's the alternative? Because I think quite often we focus on the cost of power, and we forget to look at the cost of not having power. And bottom line is, especially for businesses, but even for homes, sometimes the cost of not having power exceeds the increase that is being required of consumers of power. I can say that certainly is the case somewhere like Nigeria, where a lot of people have to self-generate at a higher cost than the increased rate from the grid.
Now, talking about Nigeria, what do you think is the lesson from Eskom's woes in South Africa, meaning your view?
Oh, goodness. Eskom's woes are deep. I'm not sure if you saw, but yesterday in the FT there was an article about the assassination attempt on the CEO. And, the article just speaks to the deep rot in the organization and the level of organized crime. But one thing that particularly stood out to me was the fact that the security services had been neutered in the time of President Zuma to allow corruption to thrive in one place, but without the foresight and the understanding of the unintended consequences that will result. So basically, you now find yourself where they need the security services to be operating at full throttle, but they're not. So that affects Eskom's, and you can imagine that affects so many other aspects. So to your question of, investor and how investor ready it is, those are some of the things that need to be addressed again to ensure that investors will see South Africa as open for business. So for Nigeria especially, those looking, we're about to have elections next month. These are the things that the incoming government needs to consider. I always think of the whole thing of unintended consequences.
All right, then, away from South Africa now, let's take a look at Kenya. Talking about taking away the little things and the joys they bring. What do you make of betting firms in Kenya having to pay taxes daily?
Well, I guess, every business has to pay tax. The issue here is daily. It used to be have to pay after 30 days, but what the tax man found was that there were all sorts of tricks being played. So to address that, they've come up with this new digitized system where at 1 a.m. the betting companies have to remit tax. So essentially what they've done is to close the loophole. But if we step back, I think Kenya has also realized that they are having an increasing problem with betting in society, because the people they find betting is the youths, both employed and those unemployed, with people taking loans, et cetera, to fund the betting. So I think there are other social concerns that are now arising, that they are using tax as a way of checking as well.
Thank you so much for your contribution on the show this morning. We actually have to end it there at this point. I've been talking to Sanyade Okoli, CEO of Alpha African Advisory.